Hey everybody, welcome back. Dr. Dan here. So this is the desktop lecture for chapter 14, which is actually, no, I take that back. This is the desktop lecture for chapter 15, which is our last chapter that we're going to cover, and that is called Ferment in the Middle East, chapter 15. It starts on page 367 of my edition of the text. So that's what we're covering today, chapter 15. So the first thing I want to do is let you know that I'll also be covering the quiz in this lecture, and this is only going to take about 6 or 7 minutes, so hang in there. So here we go. One of the beauties of using an outdated textbook, and by that I mean our textbook is 10 years old now, depending on what edition you have, is that it does not foretell of the war that broke out in Israel on October 7th of 2023, 2 years ago. And I think all of you are aware of that war now. I'm making this lecture in November, so we're under a ceasefire right now in November of 2025. Let's hope that holds. But my point is that most of you know that this war broke out October 7th, 2023 between Israel and Hamas, and you couldn't have avoided it in the news, so pretty much all of you know what's going on, and many of you may have an opinion about it, and that's fine. What I wanted to do in this lecture and in my desktop notes especially, or my little notes in Blackboard, is just to say, hey, here's what happened and here's why the war broke out on October 7th. So you know that Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th, and a bunch of people were killed on both sides, and the war broke out from that. So in my desktop notes, there's a little bit about that catastrophic event, and then what followed was, Gaza being wiped out, violence in the West Bank, so on and so forth. And most of you also probably know by now that this is all over really the land, the right for Israel to exist, the land of Israel, the land of Palestine, whatever you want to call it. That area is claimed by both parties as their religious sacred homeland. So there are natural conflicts that go way back, and especially since 1947, with the Balfour Declaration, which you'll read about in chapter 15, which, I mean, you could argue caused this whole thing, but then there's also arguments about the Balfour Declaration and was that right or was that wrong, and who has the right to be where. So this is a very difficult conflict. What I'm trying to get at, and probably not saying it very well, is that the events that happened starting October 7th, 2023 are directly related, of course, to what happened before that. And so the Balfour Declaration in 1947 being one of them. The other point is then just go ahead and read the textbook. If nothing else, read my lecture notes in Blackboard, and it will give you some of the big events that happened prior to this war that you can synthesize and think about and say, okay, I have a better understanding of why the war between Israel and the Palestinians, or Hamas, which is not the same as Palestinians. It's a political group, if you will, a radical group. But you'll have a better understanding of why that war broke out. And you'll also have a better understanding of why both sides kind of hate each other, and always have. And, there's two sides to every story. So I think it's important that you understand both sides of, why Israel, doesn't like the Palestinians and why the Palestinians don't like Israel. So there's that part. It's more complicated than all this, but I think if you're a casual news follower, just reading the one page in Blackboard will be helpful. And then go ahead and you're going to have to go through the chapter because we do have a quiz coming up on this chapter. So that's it for sort of the big picture of what we're going to cover. As far as the quiz is concerned, I will go through a little quiz review. And I don't know why this says chapter 14 quiz, because it's chapter 15, week 15. I don't know, there's some confusion, but I'll fix that. So the quiz for chapter 15, there's 5 questions as usual, all multiple choice. No time limit, so on and so forth, just like usual. And the first question is going to ask you to define pan-Arabism that's in the textbook, and just to understand that it's really about the unity between Arab nations. So that's what pan-Arabism is. I wasn't going to tell you the answers, but I think I just did there. So if you listen closely and you can understand my crazy thoughts, then maybe you'll have all the answers. Question 2, there's an interview that you have to read in the book. It's a primary source interview. Osama bin Laden. All right. So in that interview, which is in your textbook, he's got a couple of issues with America. So the question is about his first issue with America from the textbook. And I won't tell you the answer to that one because you can just go ahead and read that resource and you'll be set. And then the third question is about the major problem that serves as a basis for Palestinian anger. Again, that's pretty easy. I really talked about how both parties feel like the formation of each other was wrong, like Israel doesn't have the right to exist, or Palestine doesn't have the right to exist, or whatever. So that question about the major problem that serves as a basis for Palestinian anger is related to that concept. You can probably guess and figure it out on your own. The next question is about societies in the Middle East, and this is a theme that we covered in chapter 5 and 6 also, but it comes back in again. And the question is really about societies in the Middle East are broadly supportive of, and there's some multiple choice options there, but the answer is really they're broadly supportive of their own traditions, specifically their own Islamic traditions. That's a pretty easy one. We should all get that. And then finally, the last question is about the right of the Jewish people to have a homeland in Palestine was recognized in the Balfour Declaration by who? Okay, and there's a couple of choices there. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but it was the British government, but you better check me just to make sure. That's also in chapter 15. So that's a quiz review of everything that's in chapter 15, sort of the important points that you want to get out of it. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Via email is probably best, and I'll get right back to you. So that's it for now. Have a great night. Be safe, be kind, and take care. Bye-bye.